It was an unremarkable statue, just one among many plaster images of Mary that lined the walls of a church in Syracuse, Italy. But in 1953, the quiet town was shaken by the appearance of what looked like tears streaming down the face of this particular statue. It became known as the Weeping Madonna of Syracuse, and for weeks people flocked to see it, desperate for a miracle. Scientists came too, eager to find a more natural explanation. Was it a publicity stunt? Perhaps a practical joke? The story of the Weeping Madonna is one of mystery, faith, and intrigue. And after almost 7 decades, the debate continues. Did this statue really cry? Let's take a closer look at the facts. On April 18, 1953, the small town of Syracuse was enjoying the early days of spring. The winter chill had passed, and the locals were looking forward to the summer tourist season. As families strolled through the streets, they passed by the Oratorio di Santa Lucia alla Badia, a beautiful Baroque-style church with white walls and a terracotta-tiled roof. It was the kind of church that you might pass by every day and never give a second thought. That is, unless you notice the dozens of statues of Mary lining the interior walls. They weren't particularly valuable or ornate, just your typical plaster images of the Virgin Mary, some holding baby Jesus, others reaching out to the faithful. They were there to silently watch over the townspeople, offering silent prayers on their behalf. But 2 months after Easter in 1953, everything changed. One evening, a woman named Maria Laganola entered the church as she had done so many times before. She was a simple country girl who lived on the outskirts of town. She worked tending fields and orchards, her life a peaceful routine of caring for the land and praying for her family. On this particular night, however, when she turned to gaze upon the Madonna delle Lacrime, also known as the Weeping Madonna, something was different. Tears streamed down the plaster face of the statue, leaving wet streaks on its cheeks. Startled, but believing it to be a sign from God, Maria immediately fell to her knees and began praying fervently. Word spread quickly through the town of Syracuse. Within hours, hundreds of people had gathered outside the church, eager to witness the crying Madonna. Soon, the small town was overwhelmed by crowds. People came from neighboring villages, drawn by the promise of a miracle. The local priests struggled to maintain order, but the sight of a weeping Madonna was too much to resist. It seemed impossible that the statue could shed real tears. Yet there they were, glistening on its cheeks like diamonds. Every day, thousands of people came to the church hoping for a glimpse of the miraculous statue. Many claimed that they had witnessed the Madonna crying. Others said they had seen flowers grow overnight or felt a sudden breeze in the stuffy church. Some even reported seeing the statue move its head or arms. Fearing that the crowds would damage the statue or perhaps cause injury to themselves in their eagerness, the priests eventually closed off the church to visitors. But the spectacle had already begun. By then, word of the Weeping Madonna had reached the ears of journalists, and soon the clamor was echoing around the world. Newspapers and magazines ran stories about the mysterious statue, further fueling the frenzy. Photographs of the Madonna were plastered across front pages, each one capturing the exact same image, a plaster statue with tears streaming down its face. As the story gained momentum, scientists and skeptics also became curious. If this was a hoax, how was it being pulled off? If it was a miracle, how could such a thing be possible? A team of experts descended upon the church to examine the statue. Among them were Professor Bruno Cosenza, an Italian geologist, and Professor Massimo Teodorani, a physicist from the University of Rome. Using X-rays and other instruments, they scanned the statue, trying to uncover its secrets. Despite their best efforts, the professors were unable to find any evidence of trickery. No hidden tubes, wires, or other devices could be detected. There was nothing to explain the tears except, of course, for divine intervention. However, not everyone was convinced. While the scientists struggled to find an answer, Father Agostino Gemelli, a Franciscan friar and founder of the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart in Rome, offered his own explanation. He believed that the Madonna was indeed crying, but not in the traditional sense. According to Father Gemili, the tears were a form of divine punishment, a way for God to express his sadness over the state of humanity. This may sound strange, but it was actually quite common in the 1950s. Many religious figures believed that miracles were a way for God to communicate his displeasure at the sins of man. In fact, similar reports of weeping Madonnas had been popping up around the world since the Middle Ages. But what did the science say? Professor Carinza examined the statue and concluded that the tears were not made of water, but of a salty substance similar to human sweat. Furthermore, he noted that the tears appeared to be coming from the pores of the statue, which itself was made of plaster. All of this seemed to indicate that the tears were not being produced by a supernatural force, but by some chemical reaction within the statue. Still, the question remained, how could a plaster statue sweat? While the scientists were stumped, another theory began to take shape. It was a theory rooted in skepticism rather than science, a theory that cast doubt on the entire affair. Was it all an elaborate hoax? Had someone created a plaster statue that could cry? To investigate, the police decided to take the statue into custody. They transported it to the Gerichtsmedizinische Abteilung, a forensic medicine department at the university where Professor Teodorani worked. There, under controlled conditions, they observed the statue for any signs of movement. For their efforts, they found nothing. But back at the church, strange things began to happen again. First, the statue began sweating. Then, it started shaking. And, soon enough, it was crying again. When the news broke, accusations flew. Was the police department harboring a conspiracy? Had they allowed the statue to be tampered with? The turmoil continued. In the end, no one could say with certainty what was happening in Syracuse. The statue continued to cry, sweat, and shake on occasion, while various teams of scientists, clergy, and police searched for an answer. They wanted proof, hard evidence to back up these claims, but all they really had were reports from those who claimed to have seen the Madonna crying, along with the occasional photograph. No one knows exactly how many photos exist of the weeping Madonna, but most are remarkably similar, and that's because they were likely taken during the same time period, meaning they may have all come from the same source. The issue is that without verifiable proof, the story of the weeping Madonna is open to interpretation. What seems miraculous to one person could seem like a clever forgery to another. And the truth is, we may never know for sure. Today, the statue remains in the Oratorio di Santa Lucia alla Badia, though it's no longer on display. Instead, it's kept in a safe location behind the church, only occasionally brought out for special events. For many, the mystery adds to the allure. Is the weeping Madonna a genuine miracle, a bizarre scientific anomaly, or simply a clever hoax? Each person will have to decide for themselves. However, there's one thing that we can be certain of: the impact that the weeping Madonna had on the world. Whether real or fake, this story captured the attention of millions, blurring the lines between faith, reason, and imagination. The debate continues today, almost 70 years after the statue was first seen crying. What do you think? Do you think the weeping Madonna of Syracuse is a real miracle, a bizarre scientific phenomenon, or an elaborate hoax? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for more content. See you next time.